Hey, family, and welcome back to another episode here on GEMS Podcast. I'm your host and founder, Miss Genesis Amaris Kemp, and with me today is Daniel Liebeskind. And here's a bit about Daniel. He is definitely multifaceted, but he is the founder and CEO of Topia, a fully customizable, spatial-based virtual gathering platform that launched in May 2020. His journey with technology and entrepreneurship began at an early age and took him from Wall Street to Silicon Valley and now LA, baby. Born in White Plains, New York, he watched and learned from his dad, who commuted to the city every day, where he ran a financial services firm and invented technology platforms for the insurance industry. Daniel's first startup at the age of 8 was trading, buying, and selling baseball cards on the appraised value in Topps magazines. He taught himself Q basics and experimented with hacking on games like Nimbles. By the time Daniel was in high school, he was creating games in Java and websites for his friends and his entrepreneurial endeavors. He attended Lehigh University in Pennsylvania, where he started and led the real estate investment club. He's gone on to do other incredible things, but I don't want to bore you with that. So let's bring on the man behind it all, Daniel Liebeskind.
Yay. Hi, Genesis. Thanks for having me here. Very exciting.
And nice to be talking to an expert, because I was like, man, just kind of skimming over your bio, you've done a bunch of stuff and I did not cover everything. So go ahead and give us some fun and interesting facts about yourself. And if we have time, we can play a rapid fire game if you're interested.
All right. Yeah. Always down for a rapid fire game. So, you called me an expert. I would actually say that my life has been defined in many ways by intentionally seeking not to be an expert in any one thing. And I think of, myself like my life is a little bit like a video game where I'm trying to acquire skills, go down different paths. And, especially when I was young, and I advise young people this all the time, but like your goal when you're young is to just push yourself as hard as you can, to be uncomfortable, to learn new things. And I very much did that and, changed careers basically every 2 years, learned to code and built 25 different platforms or applications over, basically a decade. And, now I've founded and created Utopia, which has been a long time coming. It's kind of been my life's work, my passion. It's a community platform. It's a way to bring people together. It's a whole creator ecosystem. We hosted Virtual Burning Man in 2020 and in 2021. It's just a culmination of a lot of things that I'm very deeply interested in. But as CEO, really your job is to not be super specialized in any one thing, but be really good at a lot of different things. And, I'm only really able to do that because I very intentionally prevented myself from becoming an expert.
Super cool. And so we're going to definitely dive into that and learn why you're so passionate about the areas that make you multidimensional, but also multifaceted. But I want to jump into the rapid fire game, because then we'll actually get to know a little bit more of who Daniel is beyond the surface level. So are you ready, Daniel?
Let's do it. Sounds great.
Question number 1, if you could donate to any charity, what would it be?
Donate to any charity. Well, breast cancer has actually affected my life in many different ways. My mom passed away when I was 17 from it, and other members of my family have also have gone through that. So I would say, Susan B. Komen, breast cancer awareness, and education is something that I'm very passionate about, and early prevention or early detection. Helping educate people on how to self-check themselves for really common types of cancer like testicular and breast, something I'm passionate about. So I would say that.
Amazing. 2, are you an Apple or Android?
Apple.
Oh, yep. I can see the AirPods. 3, if you could hop in a time machine and go back into time and give your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be?
I would say probably stick with probably invest more in being more artistic, design oriented. I think it's one of my weaknesses right now is that I'm really good at programming. I understand a lot of different things. I've worn a lot of different hats, but the one hat that I've not worn is design and like deep artistry. And it would really help a lot in the way that I see the world.
4, favorite color.
That has changed throughout my life. Right now, I would say it's green.
Okay.
Started as yellow when I was a kid, and red has been in there. And blue, I felt like obligated to like as a teenager. But yeah, right now it's probably green.
5, dream car.
I always, every time I see a Mustang, I point it out as look at that amazing car. I was actually in somebody's like Aston Martin once, and a Mustang drove by, and I was like, wow, look at that car. And he looked at me like with disbelief that. So I think it's got to be a Mustang.
Okay, and that's definitely attainable and within reach. My car is a Lamborghini, and I want it super customizable, black on black, blue neon lights, butterfly or suicide doors, and I definitely have to have the top of the line with the highest RPMs.
I love that. That's great. Lambos.
Yes. 6, if you could have lunch or dinner with anyone living or dead, who would it be and why?
Ben Franklin. I think I'm sure he had all sorts of flaws that I'm not aware of, but just an incredible inventor, statesman, diplomat, experience junkie in some ways, which I consider myself, pushing himself to just have a lot of different careers, a lot of different paths. I just would love to have a conversation, see what makes him tick.
7, what makes Daniel Liebeskind unique?
Ooh, man. I think I can zoom in and out really fast. So I can be at a 30,000 foot view, being visionary, thinking about the big picture, and then go right down into the weeds of exactly, what line of code we would not need to write, and speaking out pseudocode on how to, get to that path. And that's kind of what I specialized in when I was running a dev shop is, imagining with a client, like what we could potentially build, and then work backwards to actually then figuring out exactly how to build it and then building it. It's pretty unique.
That is unique. 8, if you could go anywhere in the world, Daniel, and money was no option, and here's the kicker, you just found out that they're no longer traveling back to your home base, where would you go?
My intuition was Thailand or Bali. I actually lived there for a couple of years as a digital nomad, but it is really hot and there's kind of a glass ceiling there. It's hard, you have a particular type of community, but it's actually very homogenous, and there's not a lot of access to people that are doing all sorts of different kinds of things. So, that's my first reaction. So maybe I'll go with that, but maybe somewhere in Europe is actually the real answer.
Okay. 9.
Although LA is pretty great. I might just stay here.
I've never been to LA, but there's quite a big following in LA in the podcast space. So that's on my list to go. But I'm trying to go more out of the US first, and then I'll come back and do the US later on.
Yeah, I've visited a lot of places all over the world, especially when I was sort of nomadically just building things. And I really like LA. I came back here very intentionally.
Cool. You could definitely rock with my sister. She loves all things California to the point where she even named her daughter Cali, Cali.
Love that.
So 9, if you could have any superpower, what would it be?
I dream of flying all the time. It's my most common recurring dream. So I would have to say that. I love the feeling of soaring. And I have this thing where I'm standing still and I can just levitate and kind of just soar above everything. And everybody's always really shocked that I can do it in the dream. So I would love to manifest that even just once. I don't need to have a permanent superpower. Just fly once would be sweet.
Super cool. When I was in Vegas, I saw Chris Angel levitate somebody. And I was like, this is complete BS. But then until my husband nominated me to go on stage with Chris Angel, I literally almost freaked out and bust my A because he asked like, what are you afraid of? And I was like, spiders, and this big A tarantula just started crawling. And I was like, oh shoot. And almost like flipped over the chair.
That's crazy.
And then pass or play. So if you play, I ask one last question. If you pass, our roles get reversed for a bit and you can ask me a question. Do you want to pass or do you want to play?
I'll play. Sure.
Okay. So if you could go and recreate any significant moment in your life, Daniel, what would that be?
Recreate. Wow. I'm going to go with my intuition, which is challenging, but this isn't necessarily a good moment of my life, but just one that I wish I could revisit and do a little bit differently. As I said, I used to never really talk about this, but I'm being more open about it. My mom passed away when I was 17. And I was really rebellious as a teenager. And so leading up to that, and it was kind of a long, it was breast cancer. She dealt with it for a long time. But leading up to that, I was kind of aloof and rebellious and out partying and hanging out with friends and, doing my whole thing. And I do wish that I could recreate that time period so that I could actually spend more time learning from her and just understanding her. I kind of have regrets that I've been living with around not being more there during that moment.
I respect that. I lost my dad. It'll be 2 years this November. And the one thing I regret is like whenever my dad would want more hugs, even though I was mad at him, like I wish I would have gave him those more hugs. Cause there was like one day we got in a really big like argument, and I would tell people my dad and I would fight like cats and dogs. But then on the flip side, we would be like two peas in a pod. And when he got paralyzed due to medical negligence after being in the hospital for 3 days, I was like, oh my gosh, like you take certain things for granted until you no longer have them within your reach. So thanks for sharing that. And I commend you for being more open about it, because that is definitely a strength when you could talk about those vulnerable points in your life. So thank you for playing a rapid fire with Genesis.
That was fun.
Let's jump into your business, Topia. Why the name Topia, and what led you to starting this business?
So Topia is really all about empowering creators, group organizers, really anybody that wants to bring people together to actually create their own space, their own utopias, if you will, and bring people together inside of social experiences. And so it's kind of a play on the word utopia. It just also has a nice ring to it. It's fun. I didn't actually come up with the name. One of my allies did. It was kind of a collaboration. But it was early on. I actually originally called Topia Immersive, I think. IMERSIV. And everybody was like, you can't call it that. But that's, and that name actually started many years ago. So Utopia is something that I've been planning for like 5 years. And my plan was over the 2020s to basically build a collaborative social experience engine in virtual reality, use Web3, Bitcoin Lightning Rails to make it so that people could collaboratively create these social experiences, and then others would experience them together with other people and pay microtransactions basically for the time that they were spending in them. That was the original idea. And I built it as a VR platform. I had a separate Bitcoin Lightning game. And basically when the pandemic hit, I decided to, that I didn't have like a decade to build this thing out, which, this idea of the metaverse, and, that people actually really needed it right now. And there was writing on the walls that things like Burning Man, we're going to desperately sort of need these kinds of experiences. And so, threw it all out, started from scratch with browser-based application. And in 3 weeks, we had our first event from the first line of code, because it's, again, kind of what I specialize in, is like imagining this whole thing, building from scratch. We launched in public after 3 weeks. Our first line of code anniversary was actually April 25th. So it just passed 4 days ago, which is pretty cool. 2 years and 4 days now since first line of code was committed. And, then we landed Burning Man. We had that event. We've had a lot of different. We have hundreds of events every week, tens of thousands of people using it on a monthly basis. And yeah, that's kind of that journey.
Super, super cool. And I'm glad that they told you, like, hey, that name immersive is not going to cut it. But then you mentioned that your ally actually came up with the name Topia and you ran with it. So I think that's also commendable too, because sometimes people don't always listen to their allies. So I think that's really cool. And congratulations on the anniversary since you coded. So did you get your degree in coding, or was it something that you just learned along the way?
So when I was a kid, I taught myself programming. I programmed in QBasic and built games in Java. I was always a big gamer and built websites for people. And then in college, I actually was undergrad, bachelor in science, I think, of finance. And I went into investment banking. So I was at Lehman Brothers and then Barclays. And then I was a VC investor, a late stage VC investor at a firm called Summit Partners. And from there, I quit finance. Where I'd worn a lot of different hats, and I understand accounting and financial modeling, and had talked to a lot of entrepreneurs in my VC-ish role. And from there, I just left, went to a coding boot camp called Hack Reactor, lived and breathed code for like 3 months, and just started building things from there. I had my first Metaverse startup in 2015. It was called Body. It was a way for fitness instructors to create their own virtual fitness studios and teach live interactive classes where they could see the participants and participants could see each other. So that was 7 years ago now, and using a lot of the same technology really ignited my passion for the idea of the internet evolving into something that's more real time and a better way to bring people together and empower creators. In the case in 2015, it was fitness instructors as the creators. Now it's artists, comedians, really any, even visual designers, experience designers, organizers are all creators to me.
Super, super cool. So lots of technology influence, and then definitely going through career transitions and pivoting there. And I think all of the knowledge that you acquired over time has definitely helped you with where you are, because people fail to realize that what you acquired, you could always use it in the area that you are in later on in life, whether you realize it or not. And since you love video games, have you thought about blending Utopia and just mixing it a little bit with esports? Because that's a huge industry.
Yeah, we have a lot of Twitch streamers that are actually streaming. So you can stream Twitch directly into Utopia world. And so instead of being on Twitch and just writing text to each other and sending emotes, you can be watching the Twitch stream with other people and hanging out. Like you and I could be having this conversation while we're watching a Twitch streamer, or even multiple Twitch streamers simultaneously inside of a world. And we have a lot of people doing that sort of thing. Pretty cool.
That is super cool. This is another good question. So with Topia, what are some of the challenges that you ran up against, or those roadblocks, and how has it made you more successful as a CEO, personally and professionally?
So many challenges. Where to even begin? I think trying to figure out how to distribute. I'm really good at building product. I'm less focused on building distribution. And so I think for any company, any startup, any technology, you're both building a product and figuring out how to distribute it. They're the two fundamental pillars, right? And then operations really supports your ability to build product and distribute it. And so we really focused heavily on building the product and de-emphasized distributing it. And it's been a little bit of a journey. We had a flywheel of people having events, bringing people in, bringing hundreds of people. Some percentage of those people went and created their own events, brought more people in, but still we had no engine. We weren't building a distribution product. And so my advice to people is you will eventually need to figure out how to distribute. And it's way better if you build it in parallel and have a game plan for exactly how you're going to distribute this thing, or how you're going to experiment with distribution and actually building that out as its own engine, as its own product, as you're building the product. And so, that's been a challenge, scaling company, managing people, empowering people, making sure that, everybody knows what their roles and responsibilities are going to be. And, evolving those, having mobility when things aren't working out. I think we've done a really good job with that, but it's hard. The entrepreneur's path is definitely not an easy one, and not one I'd recommend for people unless it's just what you need to do. And for me, it was always not something I even sought. It was just, I really found no other path for myself.
And thank you for sharing that and the reason why I asked that question is people need to realize that no matter where you are in your entrepreneurship journey, or if maybe you're still in corporate America, you're always going to face challenges, but how you react to those challenges is what's going to set you up for success, and how you take the failures as a learning and build and grow from that to keep the momentum going. I think that's very important because sometimes people look at successful people and they put you on a pedestal, but they fail to realize that you did have challenges and struggles that allowed you to get to the level that you are along the way, and you just learn and grew from them.
I think it's very lucky to get it right on your first or second or third try. It's a little bit like the Beatles, right? It seems like they came out of nowhere and created all this music in 3 years. They really spent a decade getting to that point. And, the 10,000 hour rule from like Malcolm Gladwell, then they got to the point where they were creating all this incredible stuff. I think that's true of an entrepreneur too. I've built so many different products that have failed. I've failed countless times. And, to succeed in this game, you either get really lucky and get it right your first time, or you have to just be okay with failing over and over and over again. And figure out how to make it work. For me, like I lived abroad because it was cheap and, for various other reasons. And, I had a dev shop and got people to pay me money to build things when that's not really what I wanted to do. I wanted to build things, but, I just kind of kept doing it. And it took me a decade to get to a point where I was good enough at it that I wouldn't just fail right off the bat, basically.
And then in your line of work, who are some of your competitors and what makes you stand out to give yourself and your business a competitive advantage?
Well, we have a lot of competitors. We're basically in the metaverse space. When we first started, there were no competitors. Now, overnight, sort of everybody's competing. But to go fast in this space, and just the way that most people are architecting, when you think about like Facebook, Facebook changing its name to Meta, they're kind of a competitor. So just taking them as an example, and others in the space, they're all building server-based architectures. So what that means is that whenever you're connecting over audio and video, even through Zoom or anything, it's all streaming through a server. And that server is doing a bunch of processing, which can include downloading, saving, transcribing everything that's being said. And so you might be like hanging out with your friends in a metaverse space, thinking that your private conversations are private, but they're really not. They're going through a server. They can be transcribed. If you're an ad-based model, as many in the industry are, the transcription of what you're saying intimately with your friends is really valuable to serve you even more targeted ads. Utopia, on the other hand, we've built it to be all end-to-end encrypted peer-to-peer WebRTC. And so what that means is that instead of a server, we're serverless architecture. All the audio and video is going directly through an encrypted tunnel between two people's devices. It's very hard to build, and there are some challenges with it, but we are like the we're like the privacy-oriented metaverse platform. And that allows us to basically ensure privacy, guarantee safety and security that way. But also it creates a huge amount of scalability for us where we can bring thousands or potentially even millions of people into an experience at a very, very affordable rate.
Thank you for sharing that. That's very, very interesting. Some of the terms went over my head, so I like how you broke them down, because I tell people like that's not my forte, but you're the expert. But if you were to ask me about oil and gas, I could tell you about that because I spent 12 years there. So now, Daniel, we're going to jump into our call to action segment. So when you think about all of the things that you've said so far in this short amount of time, what do you want the audience to do? Like, what action step do you want them to take? What challenge do you have for them? Or where do you want to drive them to connect with you, whether it's your website or social media?
So I would say that this whole real-time internet, the whole metaverse thing is going to happen. It's not a question of if, but a question of how. And I would encourage people to vote with their feet and go to platforms that are not trying to replace the real world. Ready Player One is a dystopian outcome, right? We should not be trying to replace the world. We should be trying to enhance access for communities to be global, diverse, those kinds of things. And so, go towards platforms that are not trying to replace the real world and that are giving you privacy and not just consuming you as a data point. And the action step I would say is the metaverse is here right now. Go to Utopia.io or really any of these metaverse platforms and try it out. You can get started for free. You can have up to 25 people at a time, have a birthday party in there. There's templates you can customize. You can put like photo booths or video reels, whatever you want. And, it's a little bit like the early internet and trying out email as it's coming. You're either going to like know how to use these things once they become really relevant and necessary for your job and for your personal life, or you're going to be learning about it in the moment and it's going to be a little bit overwhelming. So there's a huge benefit to just start and dip your toe into the water right now.
And Daniel, how can they connect with you on social media?
So Twitter is probably the easiest place. I'm D Liebeskind, which will go in the notes, I'm sure. On Instagram, I am Explore Magic. I don't really keep that up that much, but you can connect with me there. And if you want, create a Topia world, send me a link, and I'll jump in there. We can hang out.
Awesome. I don't know why it just reminds me of this new phenomena. Candytopia is what came to mind whenever I keep hearing you say Topia. So thank you so much, Daniel, for just coming on here and educating the audience. And I am definitely going to have all of your contact information in the show notes. So listeners and viewers, make sure you go check out Utopia.io and see how you like it. Give Daniel some feedback and just play around with it and just have a good time. We are on 40 plus platforms. So definitely there's a spot for wherever you're listening. You can see all video components on YouTube at Gems with Genesis Amaris Kemp. And lastly, but not least, we are actually looking for brand sponsors, where the mission behind Gems is to educate, inspire, and motivate while we bridge the gap for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, because it takes all of us together to make these synergies and leave this world better than we found it. So until next time, peace, love, and lots of blessings. Go out and have yourself a magnificent day and learn something new. Remember, if you're not learning, you're not growing.